The gunshot that killed Rebecca Durant was meant for someone else. But Ryder Dalton figured that hardly mattered to a dead woman lying in the dust of Williams, Arizona territory, on an unseasonably hot morning in September of 1881. He had been loading supplies onto his wagon when the shot rang out, and he watched the young woman crumple to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. The shooter, a drunk cowhand from one of the nearby ranches, had been aiming at his gambling partner in a dispute over cards, but his aim was as poor as his judgment. The chaos that followed was swift and brutal. The town marshal dragged the shooter off to jail while Ryder stood there, looking down at the woman who was not, as it turned out, actually dead. She was bleeding from her left shoulder, unconscious but breathing, and no one else seemed inclined to help. The other townspeople scattered like tumbleweeds in a strong wind, wanting no part of whatever trouble this represented. Ryder Dalton had learned long ago that trouble was something you avoided if you wanted to survive out here, but he also could not just leave a woman bleeding in the street. His mother would have haunted him from her grave. He scooped her up, noting how light she was, how young she seemed, probably no more than 20 if he had to guess. He was 26 himself, old enough to know better than to get involved, but apparently not wise enough to walk away. He carried her to the doctor's office, kicking the door open with his boot. Dr. Emerson looked up from his desk, his spectacles sliding down his nose. "What have we got here?" Woman took a bullet meant for someone else. Shoulder wound. She is still breathing. The doctor gestured to the examination table, and Ryder laid her down carefully. Her face was pale beneath the dust, and her dark blonde hair had come loose from its pins. She wore a simple calico dress that had seen better days, and there was no ring on her finger. No jewelry at all, in fact. She looked like someone who had been traveling, someone passing through, and Ryder wondered what had brought her to Williams in the first place. "You know her?" Dr. Emerson asked as he began cutting away the blood-soaked fabric of her dress. "Never seen her before in my life." "Then why'd you bring her in?" Ryder did not have a good answer for that. "Seemed like the right thing to do." The doctor grunted, which might have been approval or might have been disdain. It was hard to tell with Emerson. "Well, you brought her in, so you get to stay and help. I will need someone to hold her down if she wakes up while I am digging out this bullet." Ryder had planned to leave, to get back to his supplies and head back to his small ranch outside of town, but he found himself nodding and rolling up his sleeves. The bullet extraction was messy but successful, and the woman, whoever she was, slept through the entire thing, which Emerson said was a blessing. He stitched her up, bandaged the wound, and stepped back. She will need watching for the next few days. Make sure infection does not set in. "You taking responsibility for her? I do not even know who she is." "That is not what I asked." Ryder looked at the unconscious woman, at the steady rise and fall of her chest, and felt something shift in his own chest that he did not like. He had learned a long time ago that caring about people was a losing proposition. People left. People died. Affection faded as quickly as it came, and the only thing you could count on was yourself and maybe a good horse. He had built his life around that principle, had kept himself carefully isolated on his ranch, had avoided entanglements of any kind, and yet here he was. "I will take her to the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson can look after her." Mrs. Patterson left town last week. Her daughter in California had a baby. She will be gone for months. The hotel, then. The hotel is full up. There is a cattle drive passing through. Ryder felt the trap closing around him. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that you brought her in, and you are responsible for her until she is well enough to take care of herself. You have that ranch of yours. You have got room. That is not proper. Neither is leaving an injured woman with nowhere to go." Dr. Emerson crossed his arms. "Look, Dalton, I know you keep to yourself and that is your business. But this girl needs help, and you are the one who stepped up. See it through." Ryder wanted to argue, wanted to explain that he had only meant to help in the moment, not sign up for days or weeks of responsibility. But the doctor was right, and more than that, Ryder knew his mother would have been ashamed of him if he walked away now. With a sigh that came from somewhere deep in his boots, he nodded, "Fine, but just until she is well enough to move on." He carried her out to his wagon, settling her as gently as he could in the back on a bed of blankets. She stirred slightly, murmuring something he could not make out, but she did not wake. The ride back to his ranch took nearly an hour, and he spent the entire time telling himself this was temporary, that she would be gone soon, that this would not change anything about his carefully ordered life. His ranch was small but well-maintained, a simple wooden house with 2 bedrooms, a barn for his horses, and a corral. He had built most of it himself over the past 3 years, and it was exactly what he wanted: isolated, quiet, free from complications. He carried the woman inside and laid her on his own bed, which was the only proper bed in the house. The other bedroom had a cot he had never bothered to replace, but it would do for him. She slept through the rest of that day and all through the night. Ryder checked on her regularly, the way Dr. Emerson had instructed, watching for fever or signs of infection. Her color stayed good, her breathing steady, and by the second day, he was beginning to think she might actually be all right. She woke on the morning of the 3rd day. Ryder was in the kitchen making coffee when he heard movement from the bedroom. He walked to the doorway and found her sitting up, looking around with wide, confused eyes. They were green, he noticed, a clear light green like new grass after rain. "Easy," he said. "You are safe." She focused on him, and he watched the confusion turn to fear. "Who are you? Where am I?" "My name is Ryder Dalton. You are at my ranch outside Williams. You were shot 3 days ago." Her hand went to her shoulder, feeling the bandage beneath the nightgown that Dr. Emerson had provided. "I do not remember. A drunk cowhand was shooting wild in town. Bullet caught you in the shoulder. I brought you to the doctor, and the doctor sent you home with me since there was nowhere else for you to recover." She processed this slowly, and he could see her taking in the room, the situation, trying to assess the danger. He stayed in the doorway, giving her space. "What is your name?" he asked. Katherine Reynolds." Her voice was soft, still rough with sleep and pain. "People call me Kate." "Well, Kate Reynolds, you are welcome to stay here until you are well enough to travel. I will sleep in the other room. There is food when you are hungry, and Dr. Emerson said you should rest as much as possible." "Why are you helping me?" It was a fair question, and one he had been asking himself for 3 days. "Because you needed help and I was there." "You do not know me." "No, I do not." She studied him for a long moment, and he wondered what she saw. He was not a complicated man to look at. Tall, lean from hard work, brown hair that needed cutting, and gray eyes that his mother had always said looked sad even when he smiled. He kept his face clean-shaven because he could not stand the itch of a beard, and he wore the same thing every day: dark trousers, a plain shirt, and boots that were older than his ranch. "Thank you," she said finally, "for helping me, for bringing me here." He nodded, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "I will bring you some broth. You need to eat." He retreated to the kitchen, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Over the next several days, Kate gradually grew stronger. She was a quiet patient, never complaining, always apologetic about the inconvenience she was causing. Ryder found himself watching her when she did not know he was looking, noticing small things. The way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking, the way she hummed softly to herself when she thought she was alone, the way she always made his bed carefully, even though he told her she did not need to. On the 6th day, she was strong enough to sit at the kitchen table for meals. Ryder made simple food, the kind of things he had learned to cook for himself. Beans, cornbread, bacon, coffee strong enough to strip paint. She ate without complaint, though he suspected it was not very good. "Where were you heading when you got shot?" he asked over dinner that night. "West," she said. "California, eventually. I was going to catch the stage from Williams. Running from something or running to something." She looked up at him, surprised by the directness of the question. "Does it matter? I suppose not. But if someone is going to come looking for you, I would like to know about it." "No one is looking for me." She said it with certainty, and there was something in her voice that made him think of loneliness, of being untethered from the world. "My parents died 2 years ago, influenza. I was living with my aunt in Santa Fe, but she passed last spring. There is nothing for me in New Mexico anymore. I thought I would try for a fresh start somewhere else. I am sorry about your family." "Thank you." She paused, then asked, "What about you?" "You live out here all alone. That cannot be easy." "It is exactly as easy as I want it to be." "No family. My mother died when I was 20. My father was already long gone by then. I have got a brother somewhere back east, but we do not keep in touch." "That sounds lonely." "It is not lonely if you prefer being alone." She tilted her head, studying him again in that disconcerting way she had. "Do you really prefer it? Or is it just safer?" The question hit closer to home than he liked. "I should check on the horses." He left before she could push further, before she could dig into places he kept carefully locked away. Outside, the September evening was cooling down, and the sky was turning that particular shade of purple that only happened in Arizona. He fed the horses and checked the fences, taking his time, and when he came back to the house, Kate had already cleaned up from dinner and retreated to the bedroom. That became their pattern over the following weeks. Kate grew stronger each day, helping more around the house despite his protests that she should rest. She cooked better than he did, which was not saying much, but he found himself looking forward to meals. She mended his shirts without being asked, organized his kitchen, and brought a kind of order to his life that he had not realized was missing. They talked during meals and in the evenings when the work was done. She told him about growing up in Santa Fe, about her father who had been a school teacher and her mother who had kept a small garden. She talked about books she had read, places she wanted to see, dreams she had for her life in California. He found himself telling her things he had not spoken about in years, memories of his mother, stories from his childhood, the reasons he had come to Arizona in the first place. "I wanted to disappear," he admitted one night as they sat on the porch watching the stars. "I wanted to be somewhere no one knew me, where I could just exist without expectations or obligations." Did it work? For a while. But then you realize that disappearing is not the same as being free. It is just a different kind of prison. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle. "What made you think affection was something to avoid?" He should have deflected the question, should have changed the subject, but there was something about the darkness, about her voice, that made him answer honestly. "My father. He claimed to love my mother, but he left when I was 10 and my brother was 8. Just rode off one day and never came back. My mother spent the rest of her life loving a ghost, waiting for someone who was never going to return. It broke her, turned her into a shell of who she had been. And I decided I never wanted to care about someone that much, never wanted to give anyone that kind of power over me." "So you decided that all affection fades quickly." "Does it not? Some does, I suppose, but not all of it. My parents loved each other until the day they died. They were happy together, built a real life together. That kind of love does not fade. Your parents were lucky. Most people are not. Maybe luck has less to do with it than you think. Maybe it is about choosing someone and then choosing them again every day, even when it is hard. He wanted to argue with her, wanted to maintain his carefully constructed worldview, but he was finding it increasingly difficult to do so. Because the truth was, over these weeks with Kate, something had shifted inside him. He looked forward to seeing her in the morning, to hearing her laugh at something silly, to the way she challenged his assumptions about the world. He found himself lingering at the table after meals, making excuses to stay near her, and that terrified him more than he wanted to admit. One morning in early October, nearly 5 weeks after the shooting, Kate came to him with a serious expression. "I need to talk to you about something." His heart sank. This was it. She was leaving. She was well enough now to travel, and she was going to continue on to California, and his life would go back to the way it had been before. Empty, safe, alone. "All right," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "I cannot keep imposing on you like this. You have been incredibly kind, but I need to start planning my next steps. I was thinking I could get a job in Williams for a while, save up some money for the stage fare to California. There is a restaurant in town that might need help. You do not need to leave." The words were out before he could stop them, before he could think about what he was saying. She looked at him in surprise. "Ryder, I cannot stay here forever. It is not proper, and you have already done more than anyone could expect. What if I do not want you to go?" The vulnerability in his own voice shocked him. He had spent years building walls, and here he was, tearing them down in front of a woman he had known for barely a month. But it was too late to take it back, too late to retreat behind his defenses. Kate's expression softened. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that these past weeks have been different, better. And the thought of you leaving, of going back to the way things were before, that is worse than anything I was trying to protect myself from by being alone. You are scared of being hurt. Of course I am scared. Everyone leaves eventually. Everyone goes away." She stepped closer to him, and he could smell the lavender soap she used, could see the gold flecks in her green eyes. "I am scared too. I have lost everyone I ever cared about. But hiding from feeling anything, from connecting with anyone, that is not living. That is just existing. Maybe existing is safer." "Maybe," she agreed. "But is it enough?" He knew the answer. It had been enough before Kate Reynolds got shot in the street and ended up in his life. But it was not enough anymore. She had changed something fundamental in him, had shown him that the walls he had built were not protection but isolation, and that true courage was not in avoiding pain, but in risking it for something real. "Stay," he said. "Not because you need help or have nowhere else to go. Stay because I want you here. Stay because I am willing to try this, whatever this is, even though it terrifies me. Ryder, I do not want to be someone you feel obligated to help. That is not what this is. This stopped being about obligation weeks ago, and you know it." She did know it. He could see it in her eyes, in the way her breath caught, in the slight flush that colored her cheeks. Whatever was happening between them, it was not one-sided. She felt it too. "I have nothing to offer you," she said quietly. "No money, no property, no family connections. If I stay, if we do this, people will talk. Let them talk. I have never cared much about what other people think. What are we even talking about here? What do you want from me?" He took her hands in his, feeling how small they were, how warm. "I want you to stay. I want to see where this goes. I want to stop being afraid of something that might actually be good, and I think, if you are honest, you want that too." She looked up at him, and he saw tears shining in her eyes. "I do. God help me, I do. But Ryder, I need you to understand something. I am not going to be a temporary thing in your life. If I stay, if we do this, I am staying for real. I am not interested in quickly. I am looking for always." The words should have sent him running. They should have triggered every defense mechanism he had carefully constructed. Instead, They settled into his chest like a warm fire on a cold night, like coming home after a long journey. "Always sounds good to me," he said, and then he kissed her. It was not his first kiss, but it felt like it in all the ways that mattered. It was gentle and tentative and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, he felt like a different person than he had been just moments before. The cowboy who believed affection faded quickly had disappeared, replaced by a man who was willing to bet everything on always. Over the next few months, Ryder and Kate built a life together. She moved her few belongings into the house properly, not as a guest but as a partner. They worked side by side, expanding the ranch, planning for the future. In December, with the first snow of winter dusting the Arizona mountains, Ryder rode into Williams and bought a ring from the jeweler. It was simple, just a gold band with a small emerald that matched her eyes, but when he presented it to Kate that evening, she cried and said yes before he even finished asking the question. They were married in January of 1882 by the circuit preacher in Williams. Dr. Emerson stood as witness, and a few of the townspeople attended, curious about the reclusive rancher and the woman who had somehow convinced him to rejoin the world. Kate wore a dress she had sewn herself from fabric Ryder had bought, and Ryder wore his best shirt and a new vest. It was simple and quick, but when the preacher pronounced them married and Ryder kissed his wife, he felt a joy he had not known was possible. Their first year of marriage was not easy. The ranch required constant work, and money was tight. There were days when Ryder felt the old fear creeping back in, the worry that this happiness was temporary, that Kate would wake up one day and realize she had made a mistake. But every time those thoughts surfaced, Kate was there, steady and sure, reminding him without words that she had chosen this, chosen him, and would continue choosing him every day. In the spring, they planted a garden together. Kate had learned gardening from her mother, and she transformed a patch of stubborn Arizona soil into rows of vegetables and herbs. Ryder built her a chicken coop, and soon they had fresh eggs every morning. Small things, domestic things, but they represented something larger, a life being built, roots going down deep. Summer brought a drought, and they watched anxiously as their water supply dwindled. Ryder had to ride further and further to find grazing for the horses, and there were nights when he came home exhausted and discouraged. But Kate never complained, never suggested they give up and move somewhere easier. She rationed water carefully, kept the garden alive through sheer determination, and always had something warm waiting for him no matter how late he returned. "We will make it through this," she told him one particularly difficult evening when they were reviewing their dwindling finances. "We have faced worse." "Have we? I got shot and nearly died, and you took in a complete stranger. We have been through our trial by fire already. A drought is nothing compared to that." He pulled her close, grateful for her optimism, for her refusal to give up. "I love you, Kate Dalton." "I love you too, and we are going to be fine, you will see." She was right. The rains came in late August and their water supplies recovered. They made it through that first difficult year, and the ranch, small as it was, survived. More than survived, actually. By the time autumn arrived again, they were in better shape than they had been 12 months earlier. They had a few more horses, a more established garden, and a relationship that had been tested and had emerged stronger. On a September evening, exactly 1 year after Kate had been shot in Williams, they sat on their porch watching the sunset. Kate leaned against Ryder, his arm around her shoulders, and they talked about the future in a way that Ryder never could have imagined before. "I want children," Kate said softly. "Not right away necessarily, but someday." "Is that something you want too?" A year ago, the question would have terrified him. Children meant even more vulnerability, even more people to lose. But Kate had taught him that love was not about protecting yourself from loss, but about embracing connection despite the risk. "Yes," he said, "I want that, a family. With you." She turned to look up at him, smiling. "We are already a family, you and me, but I would like to add to it eventually." "How many children are we talking about?" "Oh, at least a dozen," he laughed, the sound surprising him as it always did. Before Kate, he could not remember the last time he had really laughed. "A dozen? Are you trying to start your own town?" "Well, maybe not a dozen, but more than one. I always wished I had siblings growing up. I do not want our children to be lonely." "They will not be lonely, not with you as their mother." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Ryder thought about how much had changed. A year ago, he had been convinced that isolation was safety, that affection was fleeting and dangerous. And then Kate Reynolds had stumbled, bleeding, into his life, and she had quietly, persistently, proved him wrong about everything. The winter of 1882 was harsh. Snow came early and stayed late, and there were weeks when they were essentially snowed in, unable to get to town, dependent entirely on each other. But instead of feeling trapped, Ryder found those weeks to be some of the happiest of his life. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, talking, planning, dreaming. Kate taught him card games she had learned from her father, and he taught her how to play the harmonica his mother had given him years ago. One particularly cold February night, as they lay together in bed listening to the wind howl outside, Kate took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I have something to tell you," she said quietly. He felt his heart start to race. "Are you all right? Are you sick?" "No, I am fine." "Better than fine, actually." "Ryder, I am pregnant." The world seemed to stop for a moment. A baby. They were going to have a baby. All of his old fears tried to surface, tried to remind him of everything that could go wrong, but he pushed them away. This was not a time for fear. This was a time for joy. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be. I have missed 2 months now, and I have been feeling sick in the mornings. I think the baby will come in late summer." He pulled her close, feeling overwhelmed by emotion. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am terrified and excited and grateful and about 100 other things all at once." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you." "For what?" "For everything. For staying, for loving me, for giving me a family I never thought I would have." "You do not have to thank me for that. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Ryder worried constantly. He made Kate promise to rest more, to let him handle the heavier chores, to take care of herself. She tolerated his hovering with amused patience, assuring him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, and she was perfectly capable of managing. In May, they rode into Williams so Dr. Emerson could check on Kate. The doctor pronounced her healthy and the pregnancy progressing well, predicting the baby would arrive in August as Kate had estimated. Ryder bought supplies for the baby, things Kate said they would need: cloth for diapers, soft blankets, a cradle that the carpenter in town had made. "You are building a nest," Kate teased him as he loaded the wagon with all of his purchases. "I want to be prepared." "Ryder, we have months still. The baby is not coming tomorrow." "I know, but I want everything to be ready. I want everything to be perfect for you and the baby." She climbed up onto the wagon seat, which was getting more difficult as her belly grew. "It already is perfect. You do not need to worry so much." But he did worry. He worried about the birth, about whether Kate would be all right, about whether he would be a good father, about all the things that could go wrong. Kate remained calm and confident, seemingly unbothered by the fears that kept him awake at night. Summer arrived hot and dry, and Kate grew large with the baby. She moved more slowly but never complained, even when Ryder could see she was uncomfortable. She spent her days sewing small clothes for the baby, preparing the house, getting everything ready. Ryder found himself watching her constantly, marveling at the reality of it all. In just over 2 years, his entire life had transformed. The man who had been certain that affection faded quickly was now desperately in love with his wife and already fiercely protective of a child he had not yet met. On a sweltering August afternoon, Kate's labor began. Ryder had ridden to Williams that morning to fetch Dr. Emerson, wanting him nearby as they approached the baby's due date. The doctor had agreed to stay at the ranch for a few days, sleeping in the small room Ryder had added to the house just for this purpose. The labor was long and difficult. Ryder had never felt so helpless in his life as he did listening to Kate's pain, unable to do anything to ease it. Dr. Emerson remained calm and reassuring, but Ryder could see the concern in his eyes as the hours stretched on. Evening fell, then full night, and still the baby had not come. "Talk to her," Dr. Emerson instructed Ryder. "Help her stay focused." Ryder took Kate's hand, which was clammy with sweat, and leaned close. "You can do this. You are the strongest person I know." "It hurts," she gasped. "I know. I am so sorry, but you are doing great. Just keep going. I am right here with you. Do not leave me." "Never. I will never leave you." "I promise." It was a promise he meant with every fiber of his being. Kate had taught him that love was not a weakness but a strength, that commitment was not a prison but a freedom, that always was not a fantasy but a choice you made every single day. He would choose her every day for the rest of his life. Finally, as dawn was breaking on the second day of labor, the baby arrived. The cry that filled the room was the most beautiful sound Ryder had ever heard. Dr. Emerson worked quickly, and then he was handing a small, screaming bundle to Kate. "You have a son," he announced. "A son." Ryder looked down at the tiny red face, at the small fists waving angrily in the air, and felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. This was his child, his son, this perfect tiny human that he and Kate had created together. "He is beautiful," Kate whispered, exhausted but radiant. "Look at him, Ryder. We made him." "You did all the hard work," Ryder said, his voice rough with emotion. "You were amazing." Dr. Emerson cleaned up and checked them both over, pronouncing mother and baby healthy. "He is a good size, strong lungs, all his fingers and toes. You did well, Kate. Both of you did well. I will stay nearby for a few more hours, but I think you are both going to be fine." After the doctor left the room to give them privacy, Ryder sat on the edge of the bed, looking at his wife and son. Kate was holding the baby against her chest, and the infant had stopped crying, apparently soothed by the sound of his mother's heartbeat. "What should we name him?" Kate asked. They had discussed names over the past months, but had never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Ryder knew exactly what felt right. "James," he said. "After your father, James Reynolds Dalton." Tears spilled down Kate's cheeks. "Are you sure?" "I thought you might want to name him after your mother somehow. Your father was a good man who loved his family. That is the kind of man I want our son to be. And my mother would have loved that we are honoring your father. She would have liked you, Kate. She would have been so happy that I found you. I wish I could have met her, me too. But I think somehow she had a hand in all of this. I think she sent you to me." Kate reached for his hand. "Thank you for everything. For saving my life that day in Williams, for taking me in, for loving me, for giving me this family. You made me believe in always too." He leaned down and kissed her, gentle and full of love. "Always was your gift to me. You showed me that affection does not have to fade, that it can grow deeper and stronger with time if you let it, if you work at it, if you choose it every day." Little James started to fuss, and Kate adjusted him, helping him find what he needed. Ryder watched, feeling overwhelmed with love for both of them, with gratitude for this life that had been so unexpected. The next few months were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diapers, and learning how to care for an infant. James was a good baby, healthy and generally content, but he still demanded constant attention. Ryder found that he loved fatherhood in a way he had not anticipated. He loved holding his son, loved the way James would grip his finger with surprising strength, loved watching Kate with their child and seeing the happiness in her eyes. As James grew from infant to baby, as he learned to smile and laugh and eventually to crawl, Ryder marveled at how much joy this small person brought into their lives. The ranch prospered too. They added more horses, expanded their grazing land, and became known in the area for breeding quality animals. The income was still modest, but it was steady, and they were building something real and lasting. When James was 2 years old, Kate became pregnant again. This time, Ryder was less terrified and more excited. He knew what to expect, knew that Kate was strong enough to handle it, knew that the outcome would be worth any difficulty along the way. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1885, an easier birth than James had been. They named her Sarah, after Ryder's mother, and she was beautiful from the moment she arrived. James was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her constantly, to help care for her. Ryder found himself with a family larger than he had ever imagined having, and he loved every chaotic, exhausting, wonderful moment of it. Life settled into a rhythm. The children grew. The ranch continued to improve. Ryder and Kate worked together, partners in everything, their love deepening with each passing year. They had their difficult moments, their arguments and disagreements, but they always came back to each other, always chose to work through whatever challenges arose. One evening in the summer of 1887, when James was nearly 6 and Sarah was 2, the family sat on the porch after dinner watching the sunset. James was playing with small wooden horses Ryder had carved for him, and Sarah was in Kate's lap, drowsy and content. Ryder looked at the scene, at this family that had become his whole world, and felt a peace he had never thought possible. "What are you thinking about?" Kate asked, noticing his expression. "I am thinking about how wrong I was, about everything." "Wrong about what?" "About affection fading. About it being safer to be alone. About love being something to avoid. I was so certain that caring about people was a liability, that it would only lead to pain. And then you came along and proved me wrong about all of it." Kate smiled, the same smile that had captured his heart years ago and still made his pulse quicken. "I did not prove you wrong. We proved it together. You had to be willing to take the chance to open yourself up. I could not have done that for you. Maybe, but you made it possible. You made quickly turn into always. And you let it happen. That took courage." James looked up from his horses. "What is always, Papa?" Ryder reached over and ruffled his son's hair. "Always is forever. It is when something does not end. Like family, exactly like family." Sarah was asleep now, and Kate stood carefully, preparing to take her inside to bed. Ryder watched her go, then turned his attention back to James, who was building an elaborate corral for his wooden horses. "Papa, tell me the story about how you and Mama met." It was a story James never tired of hearing, though Ryder suspected his son was too young to really understand all of it. Still, he told it again, about the gunshot in Williams, about the stranger he carried to the doctor, about the weeks of recovery that turned into something more. "And you loved her right away?" James asked. "No," Ryder said honestly. "I was scared to love her, but she was patient with me, and eventually I realized that being scared was not as important as being with her." "I am not scared of anything," James declared with the confidence of a 5-year-old. That is good. But being scared is not always bad. Sometimes it means you are about to do something brave. Kate returned from putting Sarah to bed and settled back into her chair. James continued playing for a while, then announced he was tired and headed inside. Ryder and Kate were left alone with the darkening sky and the familiar sounds of their ranch settling in for the night. "Do you ever regret it?" Ryder asked quietly. "Staying here with me instead of going on to California. You had dreams about starting over somewhere new." "I did start over somewhere new, right here. And no, I have never regretted it, not for a single moment. This is exactly where I was meant to be. I just want to make sure you are happy." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Ryder Dalton, I have never been happier in my entire life. You and the children, this ranch, this life we have built together, it is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dared to hope for. You need to stop worrying that I am going to suddenly decide I made a mistake. Old habits die hard. Then I will just have to keep reminding you, every single day if necessary, that I love you and I am here to stay. Always, remember." "Always," he agreed, and kissed her under the emerging stars. The years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays and the steady growth of their children. James grew tall and serious, with Ryder's gray eyes and Kate's determination. Sarah was lighter in spirit, quick to laugh, always singing or humming as she went about her days. In 1889, Kate gave birth to another son whom they named Thomas, and in 1892, a second daughter arrived, Lydia. The house expanded to accommodate the growing family. Ryder built additional rooms, a larger kitchen, a proper dining area. The ranch grew too, becoming one of the more successful operations in the area. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable and, more importantly, they were happy. Ryder's relationship with his children was different from the relationship he had had with his own father. He was present, involved, interested in their lives and their thoughts. He taught them to ride, to work hard, to be honest and kind. Kate taught them to read and write, to appreciate beauty, to think independently. Together, they created a home filled with love and laughter and security. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1892, Ryder gave Kate a locket with tiny portraits of all 4 children inside. She cried when she opened it, then laughed at herself for crying. "I cannot believe it has been 10 years, she said. "It feels like yesterday and forever at the same time. Do you remember what you said to me that day when you told me you wanted to stay? You said you were not interested in quickly, that you were looking for always. I remember, and you said always sounded good to you. It is even better than I thought it would be. Every year with you is better than the one before. I love you more now than I did 10 years ago, which I would not have thought possible back then." "That is how it is supposed to work," Kate said, fastening the locket around her neck. "Love that lasts is not about the initial excitement or passion, though those are nice. It is about building something together, growing together, choosing each other every single day. You taught me that. We taught each other." They celebrated quietly that night after the children were asleep, talking about the past decade, about all they had survived and accomplished and built together. They made love tenderly, with the comfort and familiarity of 2 people who knew each other completely. And afterward, Ryder held Kate close and thanked whatever forces in the universe had brought her into his life. As the children grew older, they became more involved in the ranch operations. James, at age 12, was already a skilled horseman and took his responsibilities seriously. Sarah, at 9, preferred the garden and the animals to the hard work of ranching, but she contributed in her own way. Thomas and Lydia were still young, but they helped where they could and brought constant energy and joy to the household. Life was not without its challenges. There were droughts and harsh winters, illnesses and injuries, financial worries and difficult decisions. In 1894, a fire in the barn destroyed half their hay supply and killed 2 horses. The loss was devastating, but the community rallied around them and they rebuilt. In 1896, Kate's health faltered for several worrying months, but with rest and proper care, she recovered. Each challenge they faced together, leaning on each other, on the family they had created, on the love that had become the foundation of their lives. One afternoon in the late summer of 1897, Ryder was working in the corral when he saw a lone rider approaching. Visitors were infrequent out at the ranch, and he watched warily as the man drew closer. As the rider came into clearer view, Ryder felt a jolt of recognition that he had not experienced in nearly 2 decades. The rider dismounted, and Ryder saw that it was indeed who he thought, his brother Marcus, older and worn by time but unmistakably the same person. "Hello, Ryder," Marcus said cautiously. "Marcus, I did not expect to ever see you again. I know. I am sorry for just showing up like this. I have been trying to find you for months. I finally tracked you down through the land office in Flagstaff. What do you want?" Marcus looked uncomfortable, and Ryder could see that he was struggling with something. "Can we talk? I have come a long way." Ryder considered sending him away but found that he could not. Whatever issues he had with his brother, they were from a long time ago, and holding on to that anger felt wrong. Kate had taught him that holding on to pain and resentment only hurt yourself. "All right. Come inside. We can talk." They walked to the house, and Kate looked up in surprise as they entered. Ryder made introductions, and Kate, with her characteristic warmth, welcomed Marcus and offered him food and coffee. The children were curious about this uncle they had never met, and Marcus seemed overwhelmed by the size of Ryder's family. After the initial awkwardness, after Kate had fed Marcus and the children had been sent outside to play, the 2 brothers sat on the porch and talked. Marcus explained that he had stayed back east, had married and had children of his own, but his wife had died 2 years earlier, and he was raising his 2 daughters alone. "I have been thinking a lot about family," Marcus said. "About the mistakes I made, about losing touch with you. I know I could have tried harder to stay connected after Mother died. I was young and stupid and thought only about myself, but I want to change that. I want my daughters to know their uncle and their cousins, if you will let us into your life." Ryder looked out at his children playing in the yard, at Kate moving around inside the house, at the life he had built. He thought about the man he used to be, the one who would have sent Marcus away without a second thought, who would have protected himself from any potential complication or pain. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who understood that family, even complicated family, was worth fighting for. "You are welcome here," he said. "Your daughters are welcome here. We can start over, build something new. But Marcus, if you are going to be part of our lives, you have to really be part of it. No more disappearing for years at a time. I promise. I am done running away from family." Marcus stayed for a week, and his daughters, ages 10 and 12, arrived by stage from the east 2 weeks later. They were quiet, grieving girls who had lost their mother and were trying to adjust to a new life in the West. But Kate took them under her wing, and Sarah and Lydia adopted them as instant friends, and slowly they began to smile again, to find joy in this new chapter of their lives. Marcus decided to settle in Williams, taking a job at the general store and renting a small house. The girls visited the ranch often, and gradually the 2 branches of the Dalton family became close. Ryder found that reconnecting with his brother brought a sense of completion he had not known was missing. The wounds from their father's abandonment, from their mother's death, from all those years of separation, began to heal. As the 19th century drew to a close and the new century approached, Ryder found himself reflecting on the nearly 20 years since Kate had come into his life. James was now 18, a young man preparing to take over more of the ranch operations. Sarah was 15, already being courted by a young man from a neighboring ranch. Thomas was 11, and Lydia was 8. They were good children, growing into good adults, and Ryder was proud of each of them. One evening, as he and Kate sat on the porch watching another Arizona sunset, he put his arm around her and pulled her close. "You remember what I told you the day we met?" he asked. "You did not tell me much. You were pretty tight-lipped that day." "Not that day. I mean later, when we were talking about relationships and love and all of that. I told you I believed affection fades quickly. I remember. You were very convinced of it, too. I was wrong. Affection does not fade quickly when it is real, when it is built on something solid. Our affection, our love, it has not faded at all. It has grown stronger and deeper every single year. You made quickly turn into always, Kate. You made me believe in always." Kate leaned her head on his shoulder. "We made it together, both of us. You had to let me in, you had to be willing to risk being hurt, you had to choose love over fear. That was you, Ryder. That was your courage. I think it was both of us, and I am grateful every single day that you got shot in that street in Williams." She laughed. "That is a strange thing to be grateful for. Not the shooting part, but the part where it brought you into my life. The part where I had the chance to know you, to love you, to build this life with you. That part I will always be grateful for, me too, even though it hurt like hell." They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Their children were inside finishing up the evening chores, and Ryder could hear their voices and laughter through the open windows. The ranch that had once been just a place to hide from the world had become a home, full of life and love and connection. "I want you to know something," Ryder said quietly. "In case I do not say it enough, you saved my life as surely as I saved yours that day. I was not really living before you came along. I was just existing, just going through the motions. You taught me how to live, how to love, how to be part of something bigger than myself. You gave me a family and a purpose and a reason to believe in the future. You gave me everything." Kate turned to look at him, and he saw tears shining in her eyes. "You gave me everything too. A home, a family, a love I thought I would never find. We saved each other, Ryder, and we keep saving each other every single day by choosing this, choosing us, choosing always." He kissed her then, a kiss that held nearly 20 years of love and commitment and partnership. When they finally pulled apart, the stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of their story and would witness all the chapters still to come. The years continued to unfold. James married in 1902, bringing home a sweet young woman named Rebecca who fit seamlessly into the family. They built a house on the far edge of the ranch property and began their own family. Sarah married her childhood sweetheart in 1904, moving to a ranch 10 miles away, but visiting often. Thomas showed an interest in becoming a veterinarian and left for school back east, promising to return and establish a practice in the area. Lydia was still at home, bright and curious, and determined to be a teacher. Marcus remained close, his daughters also marrying and having children of their own. The extended Dalton family grew larger with each passing year, gathering for holidays and celebrations, creating new traditions and memories. The ranch that Ryder had once seen as a refuge from the world became the center of a large, loving family. Ryder and Kate grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces etching with lines that told the story of their lives. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and tested by life and proven to be unbreakable. They still worked side by side when they were able, still talked for hours in the evenings, still laughed together and loved each other with the same intensity they had felt as newlyweds. On a warm September evening in 1911, exactly 30 years after Kate had been shot in Williams and Ryder had made the decision to help a stranger, they sat on their porch watching yet another sunset. They were both 60 now, feeling the weight of their years but also the richness of the life they had lived. Around them was the ranch they had built together, full of children and grandchildren and the evidence of a life well lived. 30 years, Kate said softly. Can you believe it has been 30 years? Some days it feels like yesterday. Other days it feels like I have always known you, like there was never a time before you were part of my life. You still think affection fades quickly, he laughed. No, I learned my lesson on that front. Affection that is real, that is built on friendship and respect and commitment, that grows deeper with time. Always, just like you promised. Always, she agreed. Though I have to admit, even I did not fully understand what always would mean back then. I knew I loved you and wanted to stay with you, but I could not have imagined all of this. The children, the grandchildren, the life we built. It is more than I ever dreamed possible. It is more than either of us dreamed possible. And it is all because you were brave enough to stay, brave enough to love a stubborn cowboy who did not know what was good for him. She took his hand, their fingers intertwining in the familiar way they had thousands of times before. And because you were brave enough to let me stay, to let yourself love me back, to build this life with me. We did this together, Ryder. Everything we have, we built together. Their grandson, James's oldest son, came running around the corner of the house, calling for his grandfather. Ryder stood up with a slight groan, his knees not what they used to be, and went to see what the boy needed. Kate watched them together. The man she had loved for 30 years and the grandchild who carried that love forward into the next generation, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. This was what always looked like. Not just the two of them, though that was the foundation of everything, but this expanding circle of love, this family that grew and changed but remained connected by the bonds they had forged. Every person here could trace their place in this family back to that moment in Williams 30 years ago, to the decision Ryder had made to help a stranger, to the decision Kate had made to stay, to the choice they had both made to turn quickly into always. As the sun set on another day, as the family gathered for dinner, and the house filled with voices and laughter and life, Ryder looked at Kate across the crowded table and mouthed the words, "I love you." She smiled and mouthed them back, and in that moment, everything they had been through, everything they had built, everything they had learned about love and commitment and family, was distilled into that simple exchange. The cowboy who had once been certain that affection fades quickly had learned the most important lesson of his life. That real love, the kind worth having, does not fade at all. It grows and deepens and becomes stronger with every passing year. It becomes the foundation on which you build a life, the lens through which you see the world, the legacy you leave behind. And as Ryder Dalton looked around at the family he and Kate had created, at the life they had built together on this small ranch in Arizona territory, he knew with absolute certainty that always was not just a word or a promise. It was a choice you made every single day, and it was the greatest gift one person could give another. Kate had given him always, and in return he had given her the same. Together they had proven that love, real love, does not fade quickly at all. It lasts forever.